In my view, it's impossible to talk about wildlife, and not think about its role in livelihood. And I guess part of that is my own view, part of the research that I do in Africa. In most eastern West Africa, I look a role, all the humans rely on wildlife as the source of food, and also the source of income. And we talk about our wildlife, it seems we talk about fish, we are talking about what probably the single most important source of protein for human that across the globe. And, so, billions of, or more than a billion of people rely on fish as their primary source of animal protein, and most of these people living in poverty. So the management of fish resource of wildlife in that sense causing incredibly important to livelihoods and health. And also, wildlife tourism is the multiple billion-dollar industry, and in many places, such as Africa, South America, it can be the number one source of income, it can be the number one source of foreign income for economies. The Education Leadership Initiative was started by Dean Bob Joss, of Stanford Graduate School of Business. He talked a lot about the importance of education leadership. Education leaders need to be dynamic and entrepreneurial change agents. Managing is not enough, increasingly leaders must rise to the challenge of changing their organizations through innovative, problem-solving strategies. So we are combining forces from our School of Education and School of Business to support the development of management skills and leadership capacity for current superintendents and other central office leaders. The School of Education will focus on learning while the School of Business will focus on management. Now many institutes are providing education leadership learning opportunities, for profit or non-profit. We want to make sure that here at Stanford, we are not only delivering the services but with good quality. The program incorporates case studies and research-based presentations, discussions, and exercises. Participants also collaborate and build relationships through group work. However, they must realize that it is their own responsibility to achieve and accomplish. What others can do does not indicate what you are capable of.
What if you could make your sleep more efficient? While the light bulb and technology have brought about a world of 24-hour work and productivity, it has come at the cost of our naturally occurring circadian rhythm and our body's need for sleep. The circadian rhythm dictates our energy level throughout the day, which is putting our sleep health and ultimately our life quality in jeopardy. Because of this, we aren't getting the sleep we need. Most of us know that poor sleep is linked to diseases like Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, stroke, and diabetes. And if you go untreated with a sleep disorder like sleep apnea, you're more likely to get many of these illnesses. But did you know about sleep's impact on your mental states? Poor sleep makes us make risky, rash decisions and is a drain on our capacity for empathy. When sleep deprivation literally makes us more sensitive to our own pain, it's not so surprising that we have a hard time relating to others and just generally being a good and healthy person when we're sleep deprived.
Readjusting to life in your own country after living abroad for some time is a little like recovering from jet lag after a long flight across several time zones. And research indicates that after 9 years of living in a foreign country, you never really do readjust. Of course, things have changed. Governments have come and gone. What you knew as countryside has become a suburb. New technologies have changed the way people go about their daily lives, and so on. These changes may well have been taking place in your adopted country, but they were happening while you were there, so you could adapt as you went along. It is in the smaller, everyday things that you might experience what is known as culture shock, although it's not really a shock, but puzzling all the same. For example, the precise way to behave at a supermarket checkout may have changed. And in ordinary conversation, the frames of reference have changed. And quite often you find that you don't really know what people are talking about, even though they are speaking your native tongue.
Hello again. Ahem. Well, we're near the end of our unit on newspapers. I'm going to talk about our national paper, USA Today. Some of you might recognize it as the topic of this week's reading assignment. USA Today, is now more than 25 years old. When it began, few expected it would last this long. Well, not only has it lasted, it has thrived. USA Today is the largest selling daily newspaper in America. It is also distributed in many countries around the world. But that's only part of the story. The real success of USA Today is the way it changed the newspaper industry. USA Today changed the way papers look. It changed the way reporters write. And it changed the way papers gather and deliver news. USA Today set out to be different. Newspapers at the time were in trouble. Fewer people were reading them. The papers were full of bad news about crime and killing. They had long stories. They didn't have color photos and
It seems as though people are starting to suffer from global warming fatigue. In other words, they're tired of hearing about how our climate's changing for the worse and how we're destroying the planet with pollution. People do care, but there's a lot of talk, little action, and certainly no solution yet. The stories people see in newspapers focus on the negative. They talk about how politicians are choosing the economy over the environment, especially in these difficult economic times, and they write about people whose lives have been negatively affected by extreme climate change. Why should we spend our free time reading articles that make us feel depressed and probably quite helpless? Global warming campaigners must turn the sad stories into happy ones. They should talk about the actions that are having a positive effect on climate change, so that people become interested again and feel motivated to continue taking action.
Okay, class. Today we will talk about Roman doctors at the beginning of the 1st century. As we noted in our previous class, there was a 15-year-long war after Julius Caesar was assassinated. The war was severe. The number of injured was so many. There were so many that it became one of the top priorities of the new emperor to give medical care to those in need. It was around this time that the new emperor, Augustus, started thinking about upgrading the status of doctors. He realized that medical care was key to the empire and especially an army. In order to improve the medical system, he needed better doctors. So he started making the profession look more enticing. All army doctors were entitled to attend the new army medical school and were given dignified titles, land grants, and special retirement benefits. Before this, doctors had a fairly low status.
Hello. May I help you?
Yes, I hope so. My name is Harry Burke. I got a message from someone in this office saying I still needed to pay a lab fee.
Let me check. Harry Burke. Oh, yes. The computer shows that you haven't paid the lab fee for your biology class. You'll need to do this before you can attend your lab section.
I didn't know there was a lab fee. I don't remember seeing it on my bill.
Did you register after September 15th?
I think so.
The fee probably didn't show up on your bill because you registered late. I'm afraid you'll have to pay it at the cashier's office.
Okay, I'd better take care of it right away. Thanks for the...
China, which has both enjoyed sustained economic growth, faces worrying challenges. There are worrying indications that social progress is starting to lag behind economic performance, with the slowdown in the rate of reduction in child deaths a special concern. The UN notes that China spends 5% of its GDP on health. The erosion of public funding, it says, has resulted in a mismatch between need and provision, with per capita spending in urban areas 3.5 times that in rural areas. Between 70 and 80% of the rural population have no health insurance. Children living in the poorest parts of rural China face far greater health risks, and the gap is wide.
There have been several influential studies in pain management. Some of the most interesting of these study endorphins, the body's own natural painkillers. For example, we now know that exercise stimulates the production of endorphins. Lack of exercise, on the other hand, not only shuts down endorphin production, but can also lead to muscle deterioration. We now think a neurochemical component. What may actually happen is the placebo effect allows some people to sort of tap into the supply of endorphins in the
While an agreement was reached, negotiations were in doubt throughout the 3 final nights. The sticking point was Singapore. Not Singapore specifically so much, but what Singapore represents. In 1992, Singapore was a rich city-state, but not yet a developed one. Nearly 20 years later, Singapore is a financial titan and a global city. So what should its obligations be to cut greenhouse gas emissions? Under old treaties, such as the Kyoto Protocol, Singapore has none. The essence of the package agreed to here in Durban is that by 2020, Singapore will have some.
The 2.4 million honeybee colonies in the U.S., about 1 million died off this past winter. Big declines have also been seen in Europe and Asia. The die-off has been dubbed colony collapse disorder and the vanishing bee syndrome. A couple of species of mites that attack bees were responsible for similar die-offs in the winters of 95-96 and 2000-2001, and the mites may be partly to blame for the most recent honeybee losses, but a quarter of the current carnage seems unrelated to mites. Other suggested causes of the bee decline include genetically modified foods, parasites, pesticides, and cell phone radiation.
Now that story has been scotched as a part of a contingency planning, but it was a symptom of the dramatic turn of events in South Australia, and it flushed out other remarks from water academics and people like Tim Flannery, indicating that things were really much worse than had been foreshadowed even earlier this year. So is Adelaide, let alone some whole regions of South Australia, in serious bother? Considering that the vast amount of its drinking water comes from the beleaguered Murray. For all his fame and celebration, William Shakespeare remains a mysterious figure with regards to personal history. There are just two primary sources for information on the bard: his works and various legal and church documents that have survived from Elizabethan times. Naturally, there are many gaps in this body of information, which tells us little about Shakespeare the man.
The seminar provides an opportunity to exchange ideas with other students. There have been too many struggles in the mathematics department. If finance is the cause of a concern, scholarships may be available.